This is Star Wars sound design.
It wasn't any kind of digital effect or anything. In those days, we had no computers. Everything was done cutting and splicing sound with scissors and tape and physical stuff. And if you had to make a trick sound of some kind, you had to reason maybe something out. And that's where science came into it. And listening to all those movies when I was a kid, I'd listened to so many movies that I was very familiar with the language of sound in movies. There actually is a language. You know, it's not real what we do. It's not natural. It's a caricature of the real world. You know, it's a form of music where you pick out sounds for a certain emotional purpose, string them together and blend them together to have an effect on the audience.
How does it feel?
Hello there, my name is Jordan Reynolds. I'm a sound engineer and composer. Join me as we listen and enjoy and recreate the iconic sounds that we've all grown up with from that galaxy far, far away. We'll listen to the genius sound design of Ben Burtt and others who have followed behind him as we hear how they brought their iconic sounds to life. I'll then do my best to recreate them all myself. Some sounds will be easier than others, and I'm sure I won't get them all 100%, but I'm sure that the journey will be a lot of fun and a worthwhile one. So I hope you'll join me in my love for Star Wars sound design.
My first assignment was to develop the voice of Chewbacca. They wanted to have samples of what Chewbacca might sound like prior to shooting because it would be an aid in the actual directing of the film. And it would help the actor Peter Mayhew to actually perform the voice of Chewbacca if we knew what Chewie would sound like. Peter Mayhew, once he got really familiar with the sounds, in fact in some of the later Star Wars films, would actually make the Chewbacca sounds himself. He got pretty good at imitating it. We never used his voice for the actual track of the final movie, but he picked up on the technique and the voice texture of it and did a good imitation. Ultimately, Chewie's voice was made up of mostly recordings of bears. And eventually I was led to a cute little pet bear named Pooh, who lived on a farm in Tehachapi, California. And I would take the sounds and break them down into groupings that had different emotions that I associated with them. I took the angry sounds and put them in one collection. I took the cute sounds and put them in another. I took the sounds which sounded like an animal asking a question. At least the intonation was such that it sounded inquisitive. And once the sounds had been broken down into their individual parts, you could then edit them together and form little sequences of sound and in that manner build up some sense as to what Chewie was saying. And it was good because the sound a bear makes is kind of from the back of the throat. There's no articulation of the lips to form consonants. It went along well with Chewie's mask, which basically could only open and close the mouth. There wasn't really any lip articulation to speak of, and so the actual sounds from the bear seemed to work well with the mask of Chewbacca because you could believe that those types of sounds were coming from a mouth, the way it operated on Chewie.
You made a fair move. Screaming about it can't help you.
Let him have it. It's not wise to upset a Wookiee.
But, sir, nobody worries about upsetting a droid.
It's because a droid don't pull people's arms out of their sockets when they lose. Wookiees are known to do that.
Back in 1975, Lucas had suggested bears as a starting point. but another inspiration for the Shaggy co-pilot was his Alaskan Malamute, Indiana, who used to sit next to Luke as well in the car. Anyone who has ever heard a Malamute expressing itself knows that they and Wookiees are audio brothers. I spent a day inside a pen with Pooh talking, writes Bert in his Galactic Phrase book. Being a youthful animal, Pooh loved to eat bread soaked in milk. When food was finally presented for the bear to see, but withheld for a moment, Pooh began to cry, moan, and bleat for it, giving me a good range of sounds to work with. Pooh would also vocalize when other animals were paraded past his cage. Back in his makeshift studio, Bert extracted each of Pooh's vocalizations and copied them into categories that had a common emotional feeling. Some bits sounded happy, or angry, or inquisitive, writes Bert. So I was able to build up a word list. I could vary the speed and pitch of these sounds mechanically while copying from one tape recorder to another. I could run sounds in reverse and edit together little pieces of sound. I found I could create an intonation envelope by stringing together different shaped sounds, thus giving an emotional meaning to what was otherwise somewhat random. By splicing and pasting together copies of these, I could recreate the sensation of short sentences and vocal reactions. Following his usual methodology, Bert decided to add elements to the bear sounds for a more perfect effect, recording several other captive bears as well as other mammals such as dogs and lions. Friends caught word of what I was doing, so I would make house calls to collect one performing pet after another, he says. At Marineland of the Pacific in California, Bert spent time one Saturday recording dolphins, seals, and sea lions. They happened to be in the middle of draining the walrus pool, which they emptied every 2 months, he says. So Petulia the walrus and another one were just sitting on the bottom of tiles instead of swimming around. Bert recorded the beach specimens as they groaned, whistled, and barked. There you go, quite a story. So we have quite the library of sounds to get into, and we will do so right after we talk about our Star Wars sound design Slack. The Star Wars Sound Design Slack. This is a community on Slack for anyone who wants to come and talk Star Wars in any way that you like. You can join for free from the link in the show notes and just come and hang out and chat about new episodes or sound ideas for future episodes, or even just exciting things about Star Wars and other things in the Star Wars universe. So come and join us on the Star Wars Sound Design Slack. Alright, we have so much to go through with Chewie, so let's dive in. Alright, we have so much to go through with Chewie, so let's dive in. So I had a lot of fun with this one. Let's check out these original samples that I collected. The first ones are the bear sounds that I found. A good couple of vocal elements in there for sure. Next, I got a few badger sounds. So aggressive sounding. Those might be good for breaths later on, maybe. We'll have to see what we get. Next, I collected some walrus sounds. Pretty epic and low and throaty there. So cool. Now I had quite a few elements of lions next. So there are expressive lions, growls, deep guttural elements, all of those things put together here. So let's have a listen to all of those. Crazy the variety that you can get. I especially like those snarls at the end. Now I did the same thing but with tiger sounds, so let's check out those now. Some really good breathing sounds in there. That's cool. Some of these elements we'll use and some of them we won't, but it's good to get a collection going and see what you can manage from that collection. Next up, we have dog sounds. I wasn't sure that I could really use many of these, but again, they could be useful, so you never know. So let's have a listen to those. Alright, there we go. That is our collection of original sounds. Now let's see if we can piece them together and get something that sounds like a Wookiee. So now we get this really fun evolution that I went through. I actually organized the sounds into 4 different collections. So things that were somewhat angry sounding, things that were somewhat sad sounding, things that were kind of throat sounds, and then other things that were breathing sounds. So let's have a listen to these collections. Let's start with the angry or aggressive type sounds. All right, elements of all different animals in there, but all kind of aggressive sounding. Next, we have all of the somber or more sad elements put together. Some really, really good ones in there for sure. Now we have the kind of throaty sounds. And finally, we have the breathing elements. Alright, so I'm going to show you each layer of this final sound that I ended up creating. And the key here is that I have elements building on each other. I just tried to find places that one sound leads into another, where they can overlap on top of each other, where the breathing elements make sense and come out somewhat natural. So we're going to start things off with this layer of bare vocalizations. Alright, next I added some lion snarls and growls in there. Then I wanted to kind of fill that up with a second layer of lion elements, so let's hear that. Most of the good snarls came from that last line element that we heard earlier, so I put a few of those in there. Now I really wanted to end this off with the snarls or growls of a badger mixed with the lion and tiger at the end. So all three of those are put together here at the end of this full clip. Pretty cool, pretty cool. Finally, time to add the breath elements in there that I took from the tiger. Awesome, sounds pretty cool so far, but I was missing some sort of, I don't know, quote-unquote word element to it. So I took a particular lion vocal that I liked, and then I kind of manipulated it a bit, and then put it in at the very end. So here it is alone. And then I actually took a segment of it and kind of looped it within to make it sound a little bit more like there could be some word or sentence element in there. So let's have a listen to that. Alright, now it's time to piece this all together, and this next part will be hard to really show you because there were so many adjustments, but I'll play what we had before and then I'll play a newer version that has this word element as well as my having pitch shift things a little bit. So I played around with raising and lowering pitches of the different samples to try and get them all to sound like they're somewhat in the same range. So let's have a listen to these two before and afters. And there we go. That is our Chewbacca. Not too bad. That was a pretty fun time. I can't wait to hear what you all think of that. Let's check out ours and then the original back to back. Again, it's a little hard with these kind of vocal elements to make it sound identical because we don't have access to the same animals that Bert did. But I think it's totally passable Wookiee. So let's have a listen to ours and then the original. Alright, that was a lot of fun, and that just about wraps it up for this first episode of Voices for Star Wars Sound Design. I hope you all enjoyed it, and so much of what goes into these episodes is the process of going out and collecting sounds. I get to go out into the world and hunt these things down, whether it be props or vehicles or natural phenomena, finding and buying the real gear and props that Ben Burt and his team actually used. Now, the examples like today, I don't really have access to walruses and bears and stuff like that, so I had to use some sample libraries. So if you're interested in helping me out on the journey, you can head over to patreon.com/Star Wars Sound Design, and all of that will help me get better sound libraries and keep working on these awesome sounds. And you'll also get a lot of bonus stuff. I have a few episodes up there already, a few making of episodes for the past sounds that we've gone through, and you'll get to hear the special Tatooine Planet episode, which I think is really, really a fun time. So that's patreon.com/Star Wars Sound Design, and it's just $3 if you want to pitch in a little bit and help me out. And with that, I hope that you enjoyed our first Voices episode. I hope I didn't start with too high of a bar, but there are so many other great voices to check out, so I'm excited either way to move on. If you've heard any other animals that might have worked for Chewie, definitely send them to me, and we'll see if we can put them in for future episodes. Send me an email at starwarssounddesign@gmail.com or speakpipe.com/Star Wars Sound Design. Next week we have our first vehicles episode where we'll be talking about Luke's land speeder. That one was a lot of fun. I got to go trek out and find my way to a highway with a vacuum cleaner tube, so I will tell you all about that next episode. Can't wait, and until next time, may the Force be with you.